Let's talk first about this constant refrain we've been hearing from Donald Trump, Steve, that he inherited a catastrophic economy from Joe Biden. I think you should, first of all, analyze that assessment and tell us if that's true.
I think the simple answer is it's not true. The economy was doing just fine at the end of Joe Biden's term. There were certainly ups and downs along the way, but on the day Joe Biden left, the economy was growing at roughly a 2.5% annual rate, which is nice and solid. Inflation was down to around 3%. Unemployment was around 4%. Those are all healthy numbers. People were starting to have wage increases that were faster than inflation, so they had more purchasing power. Things were actually pretty good, and the stock market was certainly was higher than it is today.
Were there some things, though, Steve, when looking back on the Biden administration, he could have done better in terms of how he handled the economy? For example, there was that period towards the end of his 4-year term that people were really upset about food prices and grocery prices, et cetera.
Joe Biden's economic record was not perfect. I think we have to be honest about that. The inflation that did occur after the pandemic was a worldwide phenomenon. There was an equal amount, in some cases more, inflation in the UK and Germany and France and in the developed world. Some of it was a bit self-inflicted. We went out and enacted a bunch of big spending programs and increased the deficit and put a lot of money into the economy. And that does generate inflation. And so it contributed to the fact that our inflation rate did get up to close to 10% at its worst. And that represented a real loss of purchasing power for Americans. And so they were clearly worse off. Then, thanks to higher interest rates, the Fed brought inflation down to roughly this 3% level. There are two ways to think about food, or two pieces to the food equation. First, it's something we all buy. And therefore, if you have less purchasing power, then you're simply going to have a harder time paying that grocery bill every week. But that said, when economists look at inflation, we tend to take food and energy out of the equation because those are kind of outside our control. For example, right now we have this egg problem, and it has to do with avian flu. It doesn't have to do with bad government policies. It happened to Biden, and now it's happening to Trump, and it's neither their fault. It is just one of those things. And so we tend not to blame a president for food prices. I mean, we do blame them,
I
but
was
they
going to
probably don't deserve to
say,
be
I feel
blamed.
like a lot of
Yeah.
people blame
Yeah, they
Biden
do.
for
No,
him.
that's fair. They do. But they don't kind of deserve to be blamed. We expect our government to be able to manage general inflation and keep it down at that 2% level. And we're now struggling to get it there.